Welcome back to everyone. Here we are for our next session. So thank you for those who have returned and been with us for the whole day so far. Welcome to anyone who's just tuning in for the first session that you've attended. It's been a fantastic day so far, and we're looking to further build on that again now. So here we are at 2:30, and so let me move into what is our fourth session of the day. And this session is focusing on employee engagement in the time of crisis. And as everybody will be aware, employee engagement, of course, it's not a new concept. We've been working on it for quite some time, but the environment of employee engagement and the way that we might look at it has certainly changed over the last few months. You know, the word engagement may have been shifted slightly. We may have reframed it slightly to employee experience. People are now working from home, so how can they separate and leave their home life behind when they come to work? It's a very, very different concept that we're looking at. So we'll have to look at the world of work through a very different lens. And I'm delighted to be joined by a panel of great people who look at the world of employee engagement from different perspectives themselves because of the environments that they are within. So what I'd like to do, please, is ask each of my panelists to introduce themselves. Just because of the order that I am looking at them on my screen. First off, could I ask Laurent Homea to introduce yourself, please?
Hello, Paul, and hello, everybody. So I'm Laurent Meyer. I'm a 20+ year experience in retail. I've been joining Workday 2 years ago. Workday is a leader in HR and finance cloud enterprise application to support their strategy in retail and supporting our 200+ customer, of which John Lewis, Puma, Ocado, Primark.
Thank you, Laurent. That's very kind. Lovely to have you with us. Next, I've got Katie Downs.
Hi, thanks, Paul. Hello, everyone. My name is Katie Downs. I'm head of reward at Biffa. I've got significant experience in employee engagement as I used to lead employee engagement at Network Rail. I've also worked as, volunteered as part of the Engage for Success movement for the last 4 years, and I co-chair one of the thought and action groups there. I'm really keen to develop and foster a really positive employee experience across all organisations, and so helping where possible. Similarities really with the retail industry. Whilst Biffa's a waste management company, we do have lots of, in fact, vast majority, over 75% of our workforce aren't office based. So they are those frontline people. So I'm hoping that we're going to have a great discussion today. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Katie. Emily Lofting-Kisaki. Hi.
Hello, thanks, Paul. Hello, everybody. I'm currently the HR director for Cognita Schools Group in Europe. So we cover the UK, Switzerland and Spain. Prior to that, I was at the Urban Outfitters Group for 10 years. So lots of experience in retail. Engagement for me is just the absolute center of what we do when we're talking about generalist HR. Everything we do across all of the generalist areas comes back to, for me, to the center of engagement and that whole employee life cycle, start to finish. So yes, I'm very passionate about it and I'm excited to talk to you today.
Great, looking forward to having your contribution. Thank you very much indeed. And now moving around my screen, Heather Lee.
Good afternoon. So I'm the head of human resources for Lincolnshire Co-op, a community retailer. My role includes HR, learning and development, health and safety. And as an essential retailer, we've had a very challenging 6 months where our strength in employee engagement has really made a huge difference to how we've been able to support our colleagues and the communities in which we trade. So I look forward to hearing other ideas this afternoon.
Great, thank you very much, Heather. Moving on, Maddie Scott.
Hi everyone, I'm Maddie. I work at Groupon in the global talent development team and been there for coming up to 2 years now, and at 2 years at Groupon you get a green Adidas track jacket, so looking forward to my Groupon anniversary. Very excited. My background is occupational psychology, so yeah, definitely interested in engagement and the importance of that. So yeah, looking forward to the conversation as well.
Thank you very much indeed. And last but no means least, Melanie Steele, a good friend and a regular contributor here at the Retail Bulletin Conference.
Oh, thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me back again, guys. Melanie Steele, I'm owner of People Change Expertise, and if those that return year after year, you'll hear I'm always in a different organisation when I come and talk to you. So this year I'm helping out Arup Professional Services, but I'm also a non-exec director at the British Retail Consortium. So it's been quite a busy year in terms of the non-exec duties, as you can imagine. So look forward to speaking with you all in a bit.
Thank you so much. And for those of you who weren't here at the beginning of the day, I'm clearly hosting the whole day here for the Retail Bulletin. But my background, in fact, I'm a retailer at heart, insofar as I was a graduate with John Lewis way back when. So I started my career there. Currently, I founded a company called the Career Gym, so career coaching, executive coaching, and certainly at the moment helping an awful lot of people through an outplacement capacity, helping people move on in these difficult times to find their new roles and hopefully a career that they can now thrive in. So exciting and busy times. So we're here to talk about employee engagement. And as I said a few minutes ago, we've just had a really interesting discussion about well-being, and they're of course intrinsically linked. However, I would like to start, as opposed to going into sort of the hearts and minds side, which we will clearly move on to, and maybe the sort of the slightly harder side, if that's the right word, because we have to look at sort of the practices and the tools that we might use behind the scenes to get established in how we manage our engagement strategies. So Laurent, if you don't mind, if I can start with you. Working for Workday as well, I'm sure that you're immersed in this world, certainly with the tools side and working with your clients. What practices have you seen evolve and change or need to change in these different climate that we're now working in?
Yeah, so the past months have been really challenging in terms of engagement at retail companies. And I had the opportunity to have a multiple conversation with our customer, understanding what were the challenge there and how we can support. And they mentioned 4 things around that changed the way they were leveraging engagement. The first is communication. Absolutely key to reach out to each and every employee, and HR is well placed to do that, establishing both way communication with each and every employee. And having mobility was a wonderful mean, a very powerful mean to establish the communication. Communication should be bottom up, so that you hear the voice of employee, what they are struggling with, what are their operational challenges, what is the level of moral and their level of engagement. We use surveys to survey regularly on weekly basis employees. 2 questions, 3 questions a week. It's 10 seconds, but to get a wealth of information on where the people are, what is the level of engagement, and then being able to act on a top-down communication where you're gonna design and curate a personal, I would say, engagement and experience for each employee to leverage engagement. And needs are different. It could be to flex the time of people working at home. It can be to raise a bonus for people working flat out in the store. It can be send guidelines on safety measures. And John Lewis told us that it was instrumental to have this mobility tool to reach out to each and every employee, whether they are working from home, people from headquarters, or in the store. The second thing was actually to provide employee autonomy. So this is one of the mantra of one of our customer on Netflix. It's freedom and responsibility. How you democratize access to data and to context so that employees get the bigger picture and are able to have actionable insight where they can actually trigger action based on decision, and on decision they need to be guided. So more and more they ask, machine learning is a wonderful tool based on multiple data coming from employee and from operation to provide the insight to each and every employee so that they feel safe at taking the right decision at their pace, and being autonomous gives them more engagement in their day-to-day life. So, and the last one is create auspicious environment through peer-to-peer collaboration, social or coaching, so that people leverage a collaborative intelligence. Third, I would say area they said that were absolutely decisive was to switch from yearly engagement with their manager to ongoing performance management. So coaching for growth instead of managing only performance. So it gives two things. First, people feel that you care for them, and second, for the company, the ability to monitor closely how people are doing, how they're progressing, how they engage in the things you're asking them to do, and maybe give them orientation on the more often. So then you can use, I would say, regular checking on weekly, monthly frequency, or more informal ways of doing that through peer-to-peer feedback. Also, people appreciate that people that are working with are actually recognizing their job. And the last one, which is not the least in a multi-generational environment, is values. How you align values of the company with values of the employees. Coming back to this period, it was pretty old, and people looked at what was really essential. And the idea there was gender equity, equity of chance in the job, the ability to progress, to be skilled and support in their job, and their company needs to have that in their recruiting process, on their onboarding process, but also on promotion process. So you need to walk the talk actually, and that you are sure that there is no bias and in your different process, because people care about that.
Thank you very much. I mean, clearly there's an awful lot in there, and what rich content that is. Let me just come back to the very first point that you made about the weekly surveys that come through that. So if I'm right, it's obviously just a couple of questions that you're putting out there. And I know some organizations are doing smiley face feedback and those sorts of things. How does that data evolve? So is it just literally a weekly sense check, or does that actually go through to create some more sort of mega data, as it were, so that you can see trends and react on that?
Yeah, actually, we use the Great Place to Work questionnaire, and we run it several times a year, so that you are able to monitor the data. So it's sent to each and every employee across the organization, and you get actually people being engaged, because it's not too long. It's you can do that in front of your cup of coffee on Friday morning. Okay, it's regular, so you get a wealth of data on regular basis, and you're able to monitor based on this framework with the moral of employee, and it's really powerful because you have reference period, and you base your evaluation on something which is current across the time, and it's then given back to each and every people leader inside the organization, so they know how they do, how their team are doing. So you have a view at corporate level, but each and every people leader within the organization receives this on monthly frequency, how they are doing, what their people in their team, how they are feeling, what is missing to support them, and to get them the extra miles in particular period. It was quite powerful in this during this pandemic, because people have different needs in different region or different population within the organization. So, but you manage to have the pulse on the organization at the very detailed level. And I talked also further on machine learning. Machine learning was a great way to process these data and to get the low signals inside these data, actually.
And so may I just be cynical for a moment, I suppose, insofar as there may be some managers out there going, great, I don't have to have those conversations because I can see whether people are happy or not, and it's all being done for me. So how do you counter the lazy manager attitude possibly?
No, actually, it doesn't prevent you to do the job of interacting. I mentioned that peer-to-peer interaction, coaching, ongoing performance are key also to the customer I talked. It's just, this gives you the pulse of the company. It's just actually monitoring what is the impact of your ongoing action, how you are doing in your relationship with your people, with your peer, so that you get the sense of the result and the impact of your action. Is there a bias in the way of managing? Are you interacting efficiently or on the right frequency, too much or too little? It gives you really the idea of how you are doing and give you hints on improving that. It's not one or the other, it's complementary.
Yeah.
Paul, could I ask a question? Sorry, Paul, I know that's your job really.
No, fire away.
I'm really interested in how that gets back to the people. Is there a structure that the managers are asked to feed back? Because if I was doing a survey every week, great that the managers get a report, but as an individual, I would like to have some feedback, because I think that's one of the biggest issues with engagement. We're not very good at closing that loop, that feedback loop. So how does that fit in with the engagement survey that you do weekly?
Yeah, so actually there is two levels of answer. There is a company-wide answer, which is, okay, I get the sense of what is happening within the company at a very detailed level, and then I'm able to structure journeys. For instance, we're able to build journeys during the COVID to tell people these are the guidelines on safety measure. This is what we are doing in supporting you for people that need to care, because we heard that some people are caregiver for their child, as school has closed, or for elder people that needed support. So we need to have a targeted answer to this population. But we have also a need for well-being program for people that feel alone instead of interacting at home, or feel the Zoom fatigue, actually. So how can answer that? So this is a company level answer on designing, I would say, journeys toward different need and different population. And the second is when each people leader gets the result about this survey, they need to share that with their team. They need to tell them, this is what you told. This is what the average at the region, at the country level, across the different population or team. This is the result at geography level, within Europe or within North America, and this is the average at company level. So you're able to compare, and you're able to see what is done. And what is asked to people leader is actually to build a plan and to share this plan with their team, and saying, and not only got data from you, and that's it, and you don't know what we're doing with that. No, I'm telling you that I heard, I care about that, and this is what I'm going to do at my level, being a people leader.
Sounds great, fascinating.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm used to doing surveys every other year, or now at Biffa they do it annually. We're looking at pulses actually, which I think is a good thing, but a weekly survey, wow, it does become an industry in itself, I would imagine. But nevertheless, if the individuals are getting the feedback, then you've got to feel it's a positive comms circle.
Definitely, and I think the trick is to keep it really short. And so from an individual point of view, having 2 questions to answer, I do that in front of my cup of coffee on Friday morning. I know that it is a meeting for me, so I know that I have that to do on every Friday, and I know that it has an impact, because the company and my people leader are giving back to me.
Yeah, and I think it brings the point that you made, Laurent, which is, it's individual. Everyone's going through this individually. So we're all having different experiences at the moment. And one of the panelists in the previous panel actually put it really nicely. I hadn't heard it before, you may have all heard it, but she said, we're all in the same storm, but not in the same boat. And, it's so true. And it brings us to the point that individually, it is how we taking it in our own head. And again, in my own coaching, I've had people who've just sailed through this pandemic, and then others who you think are fine. Of course, when you dig a little bit deeper, there's all those different issues of homeschooling and other mental health issues, etc. So, and it's a very, very difficult time, and we have to take everybody individually. That's where such regular checking in with people seems quite such a good idea. But let's look at hearts and minds. Let's come to that point. Mel, you're clearly in a British Retail Consortium. If we put that hat on for a moment, you're talking to a lot of different organizations. So you're getting a pulse from a lot of those companies. What's your view? Why is it so important to win over employees in their hearts and minds from the engagement perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I mean, let me start off by saying I feel like I can't start off talking to the retail audience of HR professionals. They'll usually be there in the front row. I'm visualizing them to say, look, a big thank you to you and what you're doing at the moment with your teams. It's incredibly tough being in HR at this moment in time, with everything coming from you from all directions. But I would say, how can the business I'm in, from the comfort of my office, doing that through screens is one thing, doing that with huge battalions of frontline staff and colleagues trying to do that is something else. But I personally have been so grateful for you all keeping the show on the road. So I've been able to shop, whether that's online, whether that's when I get out and about and get into those shops. I cannot wait, whether that's in my local high street. I've been into London doing that too. And for the grocers who kept filling those shelves up every day, you know, whilst we were queuing, thinking the world was going to end and we weren't going to get our pasta and our flour and stuff. So look, I can't talk to this audience without saying a big thank you. And I hope, you know, to all of you out there where it's been really challenging, keep going. So that's just what I needed to open up and say, Paul, if you'll indulge me with that.
We all echo that.
I think where I go to with this and talking to, you know, many colleagues and through the consortium, and I think actually this is wider as well, is I've kind of gone back to basics. So I love hearing all what I've heard, you know, about the surveys and stuff like that, which I think have a really good place. I also think we just need to not lose that humane piece about this as well. And I've been really privileged to hear about how some of the retailers actually have led the way with some of this. And actually maybe in other companies have tried to follow a bit of suit, because I think you can get overwhelmed with lots of information. So, you know, first principles is kind of what we've been talking about, is kind of remember that, you know, if you look after your colleagues, your colleague look after your customers. And I think sometimes we just get so absorbed with everything. And I was sat on a panel a couple of weeks ago, a board rather, and they just talked constantly for the first 40 minutes about customers. And so you would expect the person that does people change to kind of be waiting to come in and say, that's great, I know so much about your customers, but what about your colleagues? How are they? Where are they? How are they dealing with things? And they were like, oh yeah, we know, we do know. And I think it's just encouraging getting that balance, you know, to make sure that you're giving that time to be able to talk about it, because I think the one follows on from the other. So that, I mean, I'm preaching to the converted, I'm sure, in the audience that would be saying that. My first kind of point is engage, you know, and we've been at this at 6 months now. And I think there's a real temptation that people are going, okay, we've done this for 6 months. Everyone's used to this now. Let's like dial it back. I'd say, don't dial it back at this moment. Stay there. You know, wait for the audience to tell you that we don't want this anymore. And that's okay. You know, in the business I'm in, they said, well, we've been doing this for 6 months now. So instead of doing it every week, let's do it every month. And I'm like, oh, right. What information do we have that tells us that that's the right thing to do? And the leadership were like, well, we haven't really got anything else to tell them. I said, really? Because I don't know which way's up at the moment. So should we move it from broadcast to maybe listening? Let's let it be, there's a free reign for questions for everyone. And if we run out of questions and everyone's had their say, or we've got nothing to say, brilliant. Let's give people time back. So I'm sure they've got other things to do, but let them choose in that sense. Let's not make all the decisions. So we've been switching it up and doing more polling. So we've kind of taken the decision not to do the weekly surveys at the moment, just from Katie's point of view. The volume, we weren't sure how we were going to process everything that was going to come to us in real time with everything else. So we've been doing mini polls whenever we talk, using the technology to be able to ask 2 or 3 questions to give us some instantaneous kind of the way people have been feeling. And the biggest, I guess, support we've been trying to get leaders is their temptation to fill the space and broadcast and talk at their people, and maybe not allow so much to listen. And some of that's been because of their uncomfortableness to navigate where we don't have the answers. So in many companies, you know, we've had through the summer, we've done redundancies, we did furloughs, we had, you know, different policies. It's come all over the place, and we just don't have the answers always real time, and we're honest, you know. But I think leaders have struggled a bit with, well, surely we need an answer on what we're doing. And I'm like, we do need to answer it, but we need to be honest that we don't have the answer, but be able to say, look, these are all basic principles that we know, but somehow in a crisis sometimes they get lost. I'd also have encouraged them, and I've heard retailers doing this really well, remind people that you said we've done. So in the very early days, you know, a lot of the questions and a lot of the requests was about PPE and about people wanted to know what it meant to be COVID safe, about them generating little videos. And I'm sure you'll hear from my fellow panel members who are much more rightly placed to talk about that. But people asked for stuff, and very clearly they said, and we've done this. So people felt there was a route that they could ask and we would respond within reason. I mean, if you can't do it, you say. But actually some of the things which were so basic as leadership saw it were actually really big things. So doing the little video of the store and how it would be and where the screens were and things like that, when we were talking to the retailers, made a big difference to those people who might have been very early on scared to go back into that workplace. So again, that engagement piece comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Secondly, I'm going to bang on about this till I'm blue in the face and probably in my grave, no doubt, eventually, is about showing appreciation. There are so many fantastic things that are happening out there that people are doing, and they're going, yeah, done that, next thing. And I'm like, can we just have 10 seconds at least to appreciate how that's been done? You know, and I think particularly in the people teams, that where they've risen to the challenge. I mean, in my career today, I've never seen anything like this. Even when we were in the recession, I think, you know, when we had the financial crash, I've not seen anything like this. So I think appreciation is never something that you can underutilize. And, you know, we say it a lot of a simple thank you, but I heard a retailer last week where the CEO had heard through press or something, there's something that happened, and he decides to pick up the phone to that store, and whoever answered, the first person answered, and they're like, oh, I'll get you the store manager. And like, no, I just want to speak to you. Can you just put it on loudspeak if you can? And they were all like, you could hear like that in the background type thing. But it's things like that, again, which just makes your day. Because if I think when, you know, one of my clients says, and I'm sure Paul's to say, look, can I just thank you? That was so good what you did. And you get that warm, fuzzy feeling. We're all human in that. So show appreciation, keep it going. Think about the small wins. Think about what's those celebrations. Again, talking to some retailers, they're like, well, is it the right time? Can you really celebrate that we've done this when it's meant that it's had a consequence? Yes, you can, because that work has been really difficult to do. And at the end of the day, you're not going out and broadcasting it across the whole of the social media site that we're celebrating. But in your own teams, in those small groups, yes, you do need to continue to celebrate. And this is a really sensitive kind of catch-22 situation. Again, we've been talking about, you know, how do you show that a colleague recognition? This is not the year to kind of be singing people's praises, and my view is, look, of course it's got to scale back, of course, because of social distancing and stuff, but in some way, surely you can find a space to recognize the people, the teams. I think it's about teams, not necessarily individuals, because when you go through the face of adversity, that hope of coming out the other side is everyone needs a bit of that. So in some way, if you can keep that in, I know it's incredibly challenging with all the downsizing and everything else that's going on, but just try if you can. And lastly, I'd say about that clarity and consistency of message. You have to be honest. And this again is incredibly tough in the industry that you're currently in. But at the end of the day, we don't want to revert to a parent-child relationship. I think many of us have been on that journey over the years to really make sure that we have that equal. And I think, again, talking to leaders, they want to protect or they don't know the answers. But you know, in your industry, your results are on show in the main. So people know if you're doing well in the organization. They appreciate hearing it from you guys. Rather than in the press. That's difficult sometimes, and the press want to lead with a story. But I would also say, remember, they've got plans too. They need to plan. So any information you can give, and put the caveats around it, and be consistent of that messaging. And, you know, we've really struggled with the questions that have come thick and fast, particularly when we're entering into the redundancy phase. But we have to be honest, and I think FAQs online are a really good thing with those, where people can consistently ask the questions and you can repeat the same answer over and over again, and then people start to go, okay, I get it, this is the place I'm in. I mean, I'm painting the worst case scenario there, but I think, as we all know, as we step through the rest of this year, then that's likely, unfortunately, to be more. But to end on a high note before I pass over to my colleagues, I think, you know, there is hope, there is recovery out there, there is a different way. There are many of us who want to spend our money and get back into those shops or buy the amazing food, whichever way we can get it. And we've just got to continue that hope and move forward. And for me, that is what the Hearts and Minds bit is about. Thanks Paul.
Mel. That's yeah, it's really interesting. And you talk about going into listening mode, which of course is really, really important. And Katie, if I can come to you on that point, you know, encouraging your leaders to listen is one thing, but encouraging your workforce to speak up may be a different thing altogether. It may be quite hard. I mean, some people clearly are vociferous and will always want to have their say, but hearing from every part of the population is really important in these times to get full engagement. I mean, do you have particular experiences around that, and you know, even any metrics around what you've done in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great actually to hear from Mel the you know, the people side, and obviously people are at the heart of engagement, and we must never ever forget that. But there are business benefits and business statistics actually evidence that if you can get your workforce engaged, then you know you are going to have lower attrition. You know, people leave less if they're engaged and enjoying the work environment in which they're working. There's the Engage for Success website actually has a whole wealth of data on this. Just to pull out a few facts for you. Did you know that disengaged staff are more likely to take 6.2 days annual, sick days worth versus 2.7 sick days for those people who are more engaged? So instantly there, you've got your absence levels reducing if you can get your people to a place where they feel listened to, they feel engaged, they feel they're part of it. It comes back to the feedback we were talking about with Laurent as well. You know, if you're telling people things all the time but they're never hearing anything back, you know, what's the point? They may well take sick days unnecessarily. They may then just leave you, which of course will cost more money when you know, in the rehiring and such like. Also, from a safety perspective, organisations with lower engagement are 62% more likely to have more accidents. Now, that actually in itself is a stark reason why you may like to look more closely at your engagement strategy and try and increase that. Disengaged people are less creative. You know, all of these things are going to help with innovation. If you can get your people comfortable with speaking up, they're likely to give you more ideas, they're likely to help you develop. Of course, don't forget, it's the people doing the job who often know how to solve the problems of the issues that you're having. You know, many times the managers, the senior managers, yes, they're setting the strategy, but the day-to-day doing, you're much more likely to have someone in the front line doing the job, being able to solve that problem. And really, if you can get that two-way dialogue with managers and individuals, you're much more likely to save yourself time, energy and money by opening up that dialogue and giving people that confidence to speak up. Actually, as an aside, it's National Inclusion Week this week, and everyone's nodding. It's great. I know we've been running a big campaign at Biffa. We're starting we're actually taking this opportunity this week to launch our big group, which is our Biffa involvement group. So a place where employee forum, essentially, where we're inviting individuals to come and be part of our listening program, so that you know, we really can hear from those people on the front line. We really can then take their ideas on board and really help grow engagement for all of those business benefits and, you know, personal benefits that we've been talking about. So it's win-win for me, engagement, Paul.
Of course, I mean, it is a great strategy. I mean, has your strategy changed though? Of course, you know, with your the majority of your workforce, I think, literally being out on the road.
Yeah.
Have you had to very quickly change your strategy over the last 6 months?
So we actually launched an employee app at Biffa last summer. And so the back end of 2019 was kind of getting it working, getting people to sign up to it. And we're actually up to 65% of the population who are part of it. Now, obviously, we haven't reached all of our frontline people. We know that, and we're working really hard to try and do that. But there are certain things that have helped us with that. So, for example, the company who produce our paper pay slips have been unable to produce those during lockdown. So we've been asking people to download the app, and from there they can access their own personal space where they can get that information. So our strategy actually has been strengthened by the fact that we're driving people to the app. I have to say the communications have been fabulous. We've had lots and lots of live broadcasts from our chief executive and various other members of the exec. We've had letters home, all of those things that really made us realise how important it is to talk to people. And the we always use the anonymous question option. So if there's a broadcast, or if you're even just doing a call, there's an app called Slido that works really well, and you can ask questions anonymously. And it's amazing the things that people do ask when they're given the opportunity. It's great.
And to add on that, Kathy, I think that once people understand that they are listened and they have the opportunity to talk, there is a virtuous circle happening. You see more and more adoption, and people are giving more. In some customers, people are filming themselves to share best practices across the whole organization, because then they feel that there's something to add to the conversation within the organization, which was not the case before, usually.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah.
I may get myself into trouble here, but of course, as soon as we enter into the world of technology, then if we have a multi-generational workforce, then obviously there's going to be take up from some parts of that workforce more than others because of the generations. So, I mean, getting a good engagement strategy across those generations is critical. Emily, sorry, Katie.
No, I was just going to say there's not many people in the world. I mean, I get your point about the generations, absolutely, but there are, you know, my parents, you know, would suggest that they're probably relatively old, but they do still, you know, order things online and they do have access. I think, you know, there are pockets of people who don't, but I do think we could push that out a bit more.
I agree with you. No, I'm not saying they don't, but maybe uptake is a bit slower or it's a bit harder.
Yeah,
there's a bit
true.
more reticence to take up some of that technology. I may be wrong. Please challenge me on that. It's an assumption. But you know, that must come into play when you are putting together a strategy for putting in technology for engagement, perhaps. Emily, I mean, do you have a comment on that if we are looking at multi-generation engagement strategies?
That was a really nice segue, Paul. I'm gonna
Thank you very much.
take
How
that.
slick.
Yeah, very slick. Yes, I think technology in the multi-generational workforce is probably a whole topic on its own, honestly. The multi-generational workforce and engagement forces you to have a multifaceted strategy. And that's the key thing. It's many people with many different values and needs, all in one employee population. And that should be the thing we're thinking about if we're thinking about planning. Add into that, of course, you know, a global pandemic, and in my past life retail and in my new life schools, and how do you engage your, you know, workforce and your population, in that case across many countries with many different cultures as well. I think lots of people have already said you know, some fantastic things around how we win hearts and minds, what you do with communication, but again, unless you're thinking with a multi-generational workforce head on, you're not going to be able to bring everybody on that journey with you, which obviously, being an idealist, I would love to do so. I think, you know, we see employee longevity increasing. We see at least 5 generations working alongside each other. We see Gen Z being the first true generation of being digital natives. And we can't work against that. We have to work within it. Cognita, somewhere new for me. So I joined during the pandemic, which was a whole nother experience. And they are fantastic at internal communications and have really, really upped the ante over this time, thinking about top-down executive sponsorship, open questions, pulse surveys. You know, they are really, really, really bought into being transparent and open and answering those really difficult questions on virtual town halls and really encouraging, you know, all of the feedback to come through. I still see within that, though, that we can do more in terms of the multi-generational workforce. If you think we have, you know, the most amount of our employees are in schools, so similar to if you work in a retailer, the most amount are in your retail stores, and ours are you know, key workers and are really at the cold face of everything that they are doing right now, juggling how they are bringing children and students back within COVID regulations, testing not being where it needs to be, and on top of that, really engaging your teaching and non-teaching colleagues. And how do you do that? And you've got the multi-generational workforce in very experienced heads that grew up in a very different way, and, you know, new teachers that are, you know, probably Gen Z and incredibly technical and feel great about working from home, and they had a little experience of that. So how do we plan? So you're thinking about many approaches needed for one single outcome. And that planning, if you've not done it before, I think can be quite complicated, but not to overcomplicate it. We just have to try and get leaders to understand, if they're looking at their team, they need to understand all views and all needs. And there may not be aligned values within that. And that's okay, actually, because they have different experiences and different views of what the world should give. But you have to take time to understand it. And I think as HR professionals, one of our big challenges over the last 6 months has been lifting our heads up enough out of tactical to actually be strategic and impactful, because there's been so much thrown at us that requires us to be tactical that can bury us if we're not careful, and we can forget really important things like engagement. I think Mel was talking about, we talk about customer a lot, and I see that. We talk about customer, student, parent. Do we talk about our people that are delivering to all of those people though? Because without those people, the other side of that is not getting a very good experience. So bringing back to that is really important. I think I've seen very different reactions to the pandemic, very different reactions in the generations to working from home, to moving online, to not having face-to-face contact, and also seen very different agility to be able to move and change with that. And our job within that is to make sure that if we're thinking about engagement and being planful, we are being really inclusive, rather than try and go down the middle or left and right. So if everyone has different needs, we'll go back to it. Those leaders and those team managers need to make sure they really understand their people and how they're coping. And we really need that feedback to be able to help particularly executive teams drive great engagement strategies. And I always have this this real positivity about the newer generations, because they are our future leaders. They are the ones that have forced us to think about work-life balance and well-being in the workplace and mental health care. And without them, we wouldn't be as advanced as we are now, and looking in front of us the work we still have to do. And I think we really have to make sure all generations are embracing that new feeling and the new values and the new ways of looking, and we're trying to merge them together. The things that have worked really, really well for us, and the things we're planning on, is thinking about recognition that isn't based on anything to do with money. So what is recognition? What does it mean to each of the generations? And how are we planning to truly recognize people during this really hard time with lots of extra hours, lots of hard work, and often in most places doing lots with less people? So how does that feel? So we're working on that. Well-being, which I know we just had a brilliant session on before, but well-being with depth, I think, is key, because it's very easy to keep well-being on the surface, but how do we really draw down to depth? Because now is a time when people could view well-being and think we're not being truly authentic. Because if you're telling me to sleep more or exercise more when I'm getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to take a different route to work because I don't feel comfortable with my normal route, and then I'm in work and it's quite stress-inducing all day. So well-being with depth, well-being around change. What are well-being strategies for change? That's key. And we are really transparent in organizational strategy and planning, making sure that the people narratives and strategies are very positive and realistic, and people can really understand what they are, so they know what we're trying to aim towards. And a good friend of mine, actually, I think was on your last session, Elizabeth Cowper, always says that authentic leadership is what we need to see now. And if you take it all the way back to the start, so engagement being multifaceted, multi-generational, if you are authentic, you're going to get a much further distance than if you're not. And our job is to make sure our executives and our leaders are continuing to check themselves on that front and are continuing to lead authentically to truly engage their people.
Yeah, and it comes back to, as you say, that consistent message all over again. And I wholeheartedly believe that authenticity coming back. And your first point almost, which is one size doesn't fit all. No. We have to be very bespoke about it all. Thank you, Emily. And on that point, I think sorry, Laurent,
Yeah, just to add on what you just said with Emily on technology, I think for decades, technology was a barrier for many people. And we see it's not that the Gen Z is more eager to technology. We need to change our approach to technology. I mean, the approach we took at Workday was to have the same approach as Amazon, Google, or Facebook. Anybody is able to use this kind of tool, but we need to bring that to the world of enterprise. My neighborhood, 90 years old, is able to use Netflix. So I think we need to have this approach to bring technology, and multi-generational approach to technology will not be a barrier anymore.
Thank you very much. Great.
I think if I could
Yes,
just
and
come
to-
in from the point of view of a retailer, a central retailer, staff at all levels, I think we also have to recognise that some people work to pay their food bills and their housing costs. So actually having that technology themselves that they own is quite a challenge for some of them. And whilst we as an employer have a role, we cannot assume that people have got that type of technology at home for them to use.
Yeah, but I would say now you can have multiple approach to that, and we've seen that in our customer. Some company like Wayfair, they just deploy the solution on a personal device, so that people do not have to share a shared device during the COVID to avoid safety problems. And more you see that if the technology there is something for you in the technology as an employee. I can have access to a service. I can have my pay slip. I can put a request for time off. If there is something that the company is bringing to me, you are more eager to use that on your own device, and it's okay to do that than to buy device for each and every employee actually. So. Or if you are reluctant to do that, some companies put some device to be shared. Actually, it was the case for big retailers in the US.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we've got 10 minutes left to hear from both Heather and Maddie, who've both done some really interesting work on sort of supporting their colleagues in different ways. So Heather, first of all, some of your colleagues, their working environments have clearly changed dramatically. I just wonder if you can share your story of how you've supported them through that. And then followed by Maddie, you've done some great work on resilience, so helping them build their resilience through that. So in our last 10 minutes, if I could ask you to share your experiences, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Yes. So at Lincolnshire Co-op, we've had colleagues working in convenience stores, pharmacy, post offices, funeral homes. So the last 6 months have been extremely busy, challenging, and they've all had to be at work. For many of them, whether they wanted to be or not, and some of them maybe would have preferred not to have been, but had to be in frontline customer facing roles. So we've put in place a colleague recognition plan where we've given them, for example, all free cakes, double colleague bonus, and now they're having double colleague discount. We were very lucky that we own our own craft bakery, so getting lots of cakes for everybody. And for example, in Mental Health Awareness Week, which was about Kindness Matters, we labelled the cakes up given in that week to link to that. So it showed that was important to us. We've also put in place a range of employer provided counselling and coaching and signposting people between the differences of those. We do have a colleague app, and we have about 73% adoption for that. We'd always imagined using it in earnest in the event of bad weather. We never thought about a global pandemic, but actually it's really placed us really well to get some key messages out. And you talk about a multi-generational workforce. So we have colleagues from 16 into their 80s. So quite a challenge in terms of what they want to hear, how they want to hear it, what they're interested in. So they're all things that we've had to think about. During that period of time, we've also attained Investors in People Platinum. So we actually had our assessment done remotely during COVID. So I think for us, that was quite exceptional. And that puts us in the top 150 organisations in the UK in terms of investing in their people and engaging with them. Our support for mental health and colleague wellbeing was already well established, and we've been doing that for over 15 years. So we've clearly been able to really turn the dial up on that and think about what people wanted. And during the peak of the pandemic, on our colleague app, the comment section was absolutely full of suggestions and ideas that people wanted. So we've been able to respond to those immediately. And we've had senior leaders like myself, not just, I hope, being authentic, but actually being visible and accessible by responding on that app to those questions that colleagues had and raised. So we've seen exceptional commitment and contribution from our colleagues during this period. But we've also worked closely with our trade union, Usdaw, And we've also formed a COVID-19 health and safety consultation forum. So in terms of engaging colleagues in all roles and levels in the challenges that we've had, the range of guidance that we've had and how we interpreted that, that has been a really impactful group.
Yeah, so working with the unions, of course, is a vital part of any business if it's unionized. I mean, have you got any measures? Have you got measures on how engagement has changed?
Well, we've seen staff turnover drop. Believe it or not, we've seen absence drop as well, because I think we recognise by improving hygiene standards across our workplace, by improving coaching, counselling, and informing people how to manage attendance at work or inability to do so, has actually seen sickness absence drop, despite a peak during COVID, where that was the reason given. So we've had a really good track record. We've had colleagues who were shielding, and we've supported those back into the workplace as well, using occupational health and vulnerable persons risk assessments. And we've had great feedback on those, including colleagues writing to the board and the chief executive to thank us for our support to them. And we've had a HR advice centre running, and that was run by mental health first aiders in the HR team. So people who were qualified mental health first aiders.
Okay, thank you so much, Heather. That's really insightful. Maddie, thank you for being patient, and but we're really looking forward to hearing what you've been doing. So resilience, of course, is an incredibly important part of not only well-being, but clearly that big drive to engagement as well. So what have you been doing at Groupon?
Well, firstly, my pleasure to be patient. It's been very interesting to hear what everyone's been up to. But yeah, so we sort of knew that 2020 was going to be a year of change for Groupon, but obviously had no idea to what extent that would be. So towards the end of last year, actually, we had quite a lot of requests coming in for sort of change and resilience sessions from teams. And as I said, my background is in occupational psychology. So one of the things that, one of the theories that I find quite interesting is something called acceptance and commitment therapy, which is a huge, I don't know whether they talked about it in the last session, unfortunately, I had to miss it, but it's sort of a huge
Not by name.
It's known as ACT, and it's a huge topic that I definitely recommend people look up if this sort of sounds of interest, but kind of at its heart essentially is getting people to understand what is it that they value and how can you work towards that without trying to sort of change the thoughts and the feelings that might make that difficult. So it's not feeling guilty about feeling a particular emotion. It's not trying to change a particular thought. It's about being okay with those thoughts, as long as you're kind of accepting them, essentially, as long as you're moving towards your values. So that's sort of the basis for some change and resilience sessions that we created. And the initial sessions were sort of day-long, face-to-face, manager away days that, you know, were really involved. And of course, you know, as time went on and these requests came in, we had a half-day option. And then as sort of 2020 revealed itself as the sort of hellscape it became, we were thinking, do you know what, actually we do need to widen this out. I think there's some stuff in here that, you know, we want to give the opportunity for people of a non-manager population to be able to access as well. We obviously made it a webinar, and we just made it a short 1 hour as well, rather than the full day, to try and kind of make it as impactful as possible. So we offered those out to everyone. We made sure that people could access them around the globe, and we ran sort of bi-weekly sessions at different time zones so people could join in. And essentially the session, there was sort of a short period of mindfulness. There was a little bit of education around some of the change theories. Now, I did attend the first one where they were saying, you know, a lot of these change theories are sort of struggling at the moment with this sort of scale of change to stand up to being applicable. But I think even just in terms of, you know, talking about the change curve, talking about those different emotions that people could feel, just normalizing that and being like, oh, it's okay to feel like it, you know, anxious. It's okay to feel down. It's okay to feel okay sometimes as well. So kind of normalizing those experiences. But then the main thing was basically using this ACT theory. It's something called the ACT matrix, which sounds very futuristic, but it's just a 2x2 grid really. And again, there's sort of open resource access online, but the purpose is really to understand what is it that you value. So an example of which could be if someone, for example, was invited to attend and to speak at an HR conference, and they decided they had to think about what it is that their values are. This person's values could be, do you know what? I want to act in a courageous way. I want to act in a way that's courageous, and I want to learn. So it would seem simple, right? They're given this opportunity. They have 2 values that align to that. They should just go and do it. It's simple. But actually acknowledging that thoughts and feelings can come up that can make that quite difficult. And first of all, trying to identify what those thoughts and feelings are. So this person, for example, could be thinking, oh gosh, I won't know what to talk about. What if I forget things? What if the internet stops? I feel a bit stressed. So first of all, understanding, seeing those thoughts and feelings. Then considering, as you sort of move around this matrix, considering what actions might I take? What are the physical actions I might do if I act on my thoughts and feelings rather than my values? And so perhaps if someone's acting on their thoughts and feelings in this situation, well, they might not attend the conference. They might not accept it. They might pull a sickie. They might sort of get so wrapped up in sort of thinking about those thoughts and feelings that they're actually not involving themselves in the rest of the conference. You know, they might be thinking about their own presentation rather than listening to the other delegates, and that would be moving them away from kind of wanting to learn. And it's not about judging. ACT is never about going, oh gosh, you've done these things, that's bad. It's really about kind of noticing and going, I'm really far away from where I value. And so essentially the last box is kind of understanding what actions you would need to take to move yourself practically more towards your values. So that's a very kind of whistle-stop tour of what the ACT matrix is. So please, I'm happy to talk anyone through it if they have questions. But essentially, you know, we got employees to think about any context that they like. It could be a manager leading their team through change, but it could be, you know, this is at the very beginning of the pandemic. People were working from home for the first time. So it could actually be, how do I want to show up with my family when I'm working from home and being around them all the time? So yeah, people walked away with like an A4 sheet essentially of just like what it is that they wanted to do, what was important to them, and how they were going to go and do it, alongside some potential kind of stressful thoughts and feelings. So that, in a very quick nutshell, is how we ran the change and resilience sessions.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That's a quick whistle-stop tour, but a very eloquent one. So thank you very much indeed. Well, look, that does bring us to the end of our panel, but you know, that's been a really interesting session. You know, at some point, you know, engagement seemed to be just sort of give people meaningful work and the space to get on with it. And I think that's still relevant up to a point, but there are so many layers that we've had to put on top of that. And the recent months have clearly enabled us to develop strategies and develop techniques, tools, and clearly leadership ability to navigate our way through all of this. So thank you very much, all of you, for sharing your own stories and giving us some best practice to think about and take away. And our delegates, I know, will very much appreciate all of that insight. So to all of our panelists, thank you very much indeed for your contributions. To our delegates, we will be back again in half an hour's time for our final session. So we're very much looking forward to that session, which is a discussion about how to prepare your workforce for the future. So come back for that in half an hour, please, delegates. We'll look forward to seeing you then. But to the panelists, thank you very much and goodbye for the moment. Hope to connect soon. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.